Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have swatches for you from the Twinkling Collection from Zoya for winter 2019. So these were sent to me from Zoya for review, so in the description box below I will link the Zoya site, I will link their Instagram page, and then I will link my Instagram page where you can see more swatches of everything from this collection. So we do have 12 new polishes to look at today, and let's go ahead and get started. So first we have Enza, and this is a peachy toned yellow undertoned nude shade. So here's our first coat of Enza. So this one is pretty streaky here on this first coat, a little bit patchy, so I am going to go in for a second coat. This has a good formula. It's a little bit on the thicker side, so it doesn't self-level as well as some of the other creams in this collection, but it's not difficult to work with. You just need to kind of make sure to level it out by yourself. This one does cover really well here on this first coat, but again, I am going to go ahead and show you what that second coat looks like. So this does cover completely in 2 coats for me. Depending on your application, you might want to go in for a third coat. If you use the Zoya Z-Wide brushes, you'll probably get opacity faster and a solid 2-coater. This does dry nice and glossy all on its own. I would recommend a top coat just to keep it lasting, and that goes for pretty much everything across the board in this collection. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Steph, and this is a pinky toned nude cream, and then here it is next to Enza, just so you can see how yellow Enza is and how pink this Steph shade is. Here's our first coat of Steph. So this one does have the same formula and coverage as Enza did. It's a little bit streaky here on this first coat. It does have a little bit of a thicker formula, but again, it's not difficult to work with. You do just want to be sure to kind of level it out by yourself. You can't really trust the polish to do it for you for these 2. So here's our second coat, and that does cover completely in 2 coats for me. Again, depending on your application though, you might want to go in for a third coat of this. If you do purchase those Z-Wide brushes though, this one is pretty solidly a 2-coater. This one is also going to dry nice and glossy all on its own. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Tanya, and this is a bright fire engine red cream. So here's our first coat of Tanya. So this one covers really well here on this first coat. It is kind of more of a jellyish finish, so I am going to go ahead and show you what a second coat looks like today, but honestly nobody would be able to make out your nail line here on 1 coat if you had to kind of polish and go. Formula on this is really good, very smooth, not too thick, not too thin, very buttery to apply, completely opaque here in 2 coats for me. This one is also going to dry it nice and glossy on its own, and it does self-level really, really well. So there's 2 coats. Up next we have Rosa, and this is like a hot pink shimmer. Here's our first coat of Rosa. So this one covers really, really well here on this first coat. If you're not super picky, you could probably get away with 1 thicker coat of this. I am going to show you today what 2 thinner coats looks like though. This one has a really good formula. I didn't have any running or pooling or staining. This one also self-levels really nicely. It's not too thick or too thin. The shimmer that's in here stands out really nicely on the nail. It's very kind of ethereal and glowy. I do appreciate that. So here's our second coat, and that does cover completely in 2 coats. This one is going to dry down on the dull side, so you will want a glossy top coat to finish this off if you don't like that finish. The top coat is also going to help keep your manicure lasting as long as possible. This one does have some brush strokes when it's wet, and they do go away as it dries. So there's 2 coats. Up next we have May, and this is a dusty pink, kind of rosy cream. Here's our first coat of May, or Mai. So this one covers very well here on this first coat, almost a one coater. I am working in pretty thin coats, so I am going to show you what 2 coats looks like today, but again, depending on your application and which brush you put on your Zoya bottles, 1 coat might be able to suit you just fine. So here's our second coat, and that does cover completely in 2 coats. This one is going to dry down darker than when it's wet, so just bear that in mind. It's not going to look identical to what it does in the bottle. This is going to dry nice and glossy all on its own. Again, I would recommend top coat just to keep your manicure lasting. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Alesia, and this is a icy kind of blue. It's not icy, it is more of a primary blue, but the shimmer that's in here is super bright, super frosty feeling, and it's obviously shimmery, not a cream. Here's our first coat of Alessia. So this one is a little bit sheer here on this first coat. It does have a very good, very smooth, easy to work with formula. I didn't have any kind of running or pulling or staining with this one. This is super reflective off the nail. It's nice and bright. It's one of those kind of like showstopper polishes. When it's built up to a full manicure, it is very beautiful. So here's our second coat, and that does cover completely in 2 coats. This one does dry decently glossy on its own. I would still recommend that top coat just to kind of give it that finished look. And nothing in this polish is going to dry textured, and nothing in this is going to be difficult to remove, but these are larger shimmer particles, so it can get a little messy. So there's 2 coats. So up next we have Jen, and this is a deeper, kind of more of a midnight blue shimmer. And then here it is next to Alesia, just so you can see the difference in blue shades. So here's our first coat of Jen. So coverage-wise, this does cover pretty well on this first coat. It's not completely opaque, and it is a little bit uneven, so I am going to go in for a second coat. This one also has a really good formula. I didn't have any running or pulling with this one. I also didn't have any staining with this one. Depending on if blue is a stainer for you typically, this one might be a bit of a stainer. I don't use base coat when I swatch though, so I didn't have any kind of issues. So here's our second coat, and that does cover completely in 2 coats. The shimmer that's in here pops off the nail. This is so beautiful. This one also is going to dry a little bit less than lustrous, so I would recommend a top coat for this, but nothing's going to dry textured or be difficult to remove. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Gabby, and this is definitely looking more blown out here on camera than it is in person, but this is more of a cooler toned purple cream. So here's our first coat of Gabby. So this one is just a little bit uneven here on this first coat, but coverage is really good. It's not completely opaque. Again, I am trying to work in thinner coats for these, so I am going to go ahead and build this up with a second coat. The formula on this is really good, smooth, easy to apply, no running, pulling, or staining. This one also does self-level really, really nicely. So here's our second coat, and that does cover completely in 2 coats. This isn't a purple either that would be mistaken for black in any kind of lighting. This does dry a little bit darker than when it's wet though, so just bear that in mind, but it will dry nice and glossy all on its own. So there is 2 coats. Up next we have Jett, and this is a gunmetal gray with these shards of like a silver fleck throughout them, and it's a shimmery polish that dries to a matte finish. Here's our first coat of Jett. So this covers really well here in this first coat. Again, I am going to go ahead and show you what a second coat looks like today. Formula is good, smooth, easy to apply. I didn't have, again, running, pulling, or staining. These larger shredded glitters come out nice and easily, and they are easy to manipulate across the nail as well. So here's our second coat, and that does cover completely in 2 coats. This one is going to dry down matte, so if you don't love that, you will want a glossy top coat to finish this off. It dries with a slight bit of texture because of those larger flakes, so I feel like if I wore it without a top coat, it would drive me insane. But I know it's meant to be that way, so I don't know. There's 2 coats. Up next we have Tyrion, and this is a smoky, kind of lighter smoky gray cream. Here's our first coat of Tieran. So this one covers really well here on this first coat. It's just basically the same as all of the other creams in this collection. A very smooth, easy to work with formula. I do realize at this point that I needed to buff my nails, so you are going to see some little spots because of Jett. That is not the polish's fault. This goes on really smooth and really opaque, but here is our second coat, and that does cover completely in 2 coats. I didn't have any kind of running or pooling or staining with this one, and this is another one that dries down darker than it applies. This also has a nice subtle purpley hint to it, and I think it's beautiful. So there's 2 coats. So up next we have Sedona, and in the bottle here it kind of looks like a brown, like a Coca-Cola brown with a red shimmer. But when I opened it, it definitely has some purpley tones to it, and this shimmer is a shifty shimmer that actually goes from this like brighter red to a gold. Here's our first coat of Sedona. So this one covers pretty well here on this first coat. It's not totally even, nor does it match the color in the bottle, so I am going to show you what a second coat looks like. Formula is again very smooth and easy to work with, no running or pooling or staining for me, but if reds tend to stain you, I would definitely recommend just putting on a base coat before applying the polish. This one also being jam-packed with shimmer, I didn't have any brush stroking issues. So there's our second coat, and this does cover completely in 2 coats. The shimmer in this one is beautiful, but it doesn't stand out as much as it does in the bottle, so just bear that in mind. This one will require a top coat as it doesn't dry super duper glossy, but nothing will be textured or difficult to remove, so there's 2 coats. And lastly for today we have Cade, and this is a clear base full of gold and silver holographic shredded glitter. So today I'm going to show this on its own, but I do have swatches over all of the creams in this collection. I will put those on my Instagram as soon as I possibly can. And here's our first coat of Cade. So being as I'm building this one up to opacity on its own, it does require a little bit of manipulation to kind of get those glitters spread out nice and evenly. That way I don't have a traffic jam of glitters later on. Formula is very good considering I had swatched this at this point already over everything in this collection. So I had used it, 12 times at this point. So still a very good smooth formula, not too thick, not too thin. The glitter payoff is fantastic. The base to glitter ratio is excellent. These larger shreds also come out nice and easily. This one is definitely going to dry with some texture, so you will want a top coat to finish this off, and I would highly recommend a peel off base coat for this because removal is pretty difficult. This one does look great both as a topper and as a full manicure. I personally, though, prefer it as a topper. If you don't want to apply 3 coats of this, you could definitely use the sponging method. It would get you to opacity faster, but I will avoid sponging at all costs if I can. So there's 3 coats. So I do have a few standouts, and I will let you guys know that none of them are the creams. I do love the creams in this collection, but the standouts for me were the non-cream shades. So the first one would be Cade. I think this looks really beautiful first off on its own, and it would make a gorgeous holiday manicure on its own that way, but it looks really, really beautiful as a topper. So really like that, and I also have nothing like this in my collection, so it's totally original. That one is definitely a standout. I also really liked Alessia. Nice icy blue, always good for like winter manicures for me. I think that's a really, really beautiful polish altogether. Jen is a standout. This nice deep blue. It was actually really, really flattering on my skin tone. And this isn't something that I wear like typically, but I thoroughly like this, and I think it's also going to be really gorgeous for winter. And then Sedona was my last favorite. This one is definitely more of a fall polish in my opinion, but it's gorgeous, and it reminds me of OPI, something about Oktoberfest that was discontinued, so I don't have that one. I loved it, like in pictures, so I'm actually really excited to have something decently similar. So those were the 4 standouts from the collection. For me, the creams were fantastic, but these ones were kind of like the showstoppers for me. And guys, that is it. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this collection. Let me know if you plan on picking any of them up. Let me know what your favorite was. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you'd like to see more from me, and I will talk to you again next time.